Let us pray. Our gracious God, we want to thank you for the morning that you have given us. It's a privilege to receive your word. As weak we are, as sinful, and Lord, need of your grace, need of your word, need of your comforting presence and comforting truth. We come here in the heart of worship, Lord, expecting that you would send us your comfort. Those who are believing, Lord, you may build and encourage. Those who are breaking, that you may build them. And those who are hard, you may break them. Father, thank you for the word again. Enable us, we commit ourselves into your hand. We give you all the glory and honor to you. In Jesus' most precious name we pray. Amen. Alright, so let me take you to the text that we have today. With a couple of important things that we see everyday life. We have our little kid growing up in our house. It's almost imperative for us to tell him that you are a good boy. So whenever we ask him, you are a good boy, and that is the way of telling him to do certain things we want him to do. So the idea of you are good becomes almost inevitable for every human being, from the childhood to the people who have grown up so much. They need some sort of assurance. Even if you tell them that there is no inch of or ounce of truth in that, they still want to hear that they are really good. So in the human psychology, everyone has a need to be elevated in their emotion and in their egos. Whenever we look for brides and grooms, the first question we ask, how's the guy? How's the girl? Is she good? Is the boy very good? What we mean basically is the ethical and moral virtues of the person. It doesn't matter what kind of things that he does in private, but all we aim for is how is the person regarded in the personal public life? How do people conceive him? But on the contrary, the scripture demands does not go from the public, that is from the top, but it comes from the bottom. It does not start from how people regard in public, but rather how God regards a person in private. It builds from the individual thoughts and character and virtues of every single person as a Christian, every single person in the world. And Paul is hitting the bullseye of Christian life. That's why I termed it as the marrow of Christian life. A marrow is a place which segregates blood, bone marrow as we call it, or the fundamental place of anything and everything. So the marrow of Christian life, according to me, that it is Paul is summarizing so beautifully as he transitions from chapter 3 to chapter 4. Let me read the verse for you. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. So it is basically a call for ethical and moral transformation of the new community, meaning a changed people, as a response to the gospel with which they have received that new identity in Jesus Christ. I know this is a mouthful, let me unpack it little by little for you. Right, before we move on to before we move on to our main points, I want to make a couple of preliminary observations. I think the text, the font is a little smaller, I guess. Right. There are two kinds of people in the church. Those who love practical aspects, so disregards theology as theory. And there are kinds of people who loves the theory, and on the way they forget their practical application or the obvious effects of the theology. We live with two kinds of people, obviously. We are all usually in one side of the spectrum. But by definition, theology is a study of God, God's gracious revelation to man, that man may know God, and in the light of that truth, that man may know about himself, knowing that who is God and who is man, in that knowledge of God and God's truth, that man may order himself as the way God demands him to be. In other words, that man may give his utmost to the highest. Man may give his utmost to God only by looking at who God is. It basically then means theology becomes the spring of all of practical life. But because of our sinfulness, we are all born schizophrenic, meaning we do not live out what we often claim we believe. We often profess to be something, but we always behave as somebody else. It's a nature with which we are born. It's a problem of sin. So the practical theology is an application that comes, that is derived, that is expected out of the theological education or theological learning. So it starts with the mind. It starts with mind being convicted of the truth, being convinced of the realities of the truth, and bringing it to the aspects of everyday living. As someone who is not convinced about 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 can never be able to apply it in business, can never be able to apply it in everyday living. I think people are saying 1 plus 1 is 2, but I have a different opinion on that. I don't know. Let's discuss if you want. He will incur heavy business losses. So he will incur so much of heavy losses when it is not properly applied, brought into everyday setting of life. So the practical theology is an application, practicing aspect of theology. And the second aspect is its usefulness or its application of practical theology is seen only when it is visibly seen as a transformation of ethical and moral behaviors of human beings. Now, what do I mean by ethical and moral behaviors? What they say as right and wrong, and with what is the value system they live and approach the world. How do they conduct themselves as workers in office? How do they conduct themselves as brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, as brothers in the fellowship, sisters in the fellowship? And every single moment they carry the virtues of that practical application that is derived out of the theology. So those who live a falsified way of living is a testament to falsified theology being at practice. At the core of their life, they deny God and His power in their life. Our anger, our selfishness, our lust, or anything that is visibly seen as a sinful behaviors in life, all that leads us to tell that we do not regard God as God. Paul is addressing these issues to Ephesians. How did he start? The first point, then, actually we move to transition to first point, that a hope for the change in ethical and moral character is in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now why am I saying that? Look at the verse, how it starts. Therefore, I, prisoner of the Lord, implore or urge or just plead or appeal. That is the word Paul is using. Why is he using this in the first place? We all know in our study, whenever we have a normal conversation, when somebody is using the conjunctions like therefore, because, there is always something which is already said or assumed or presupposed. So Paul's appeal for the instruction to be somebody in the life, instruction to be changed or transformed in the ethical and moral behavior, do not come without any base or any background. He is not even presupposing, I am Paul, apostle. God has called me as an apostle. I am saying this because you should do this. He's not saying any such claim of his superiority as an apostle. Nor is he basing his call to change or call to be transformed in the ethical and moral behavior, basing his experience as a Christian. There are a lot of people who claims, I am very old. I have seen bad days and good days. I am very old, I have experienced, you should listen. Paul's point is not that. Paul does not claim that. But rather, Paul goes on to something very profound, something eternal, something obvious, something that is never changing. What is that? He goes back to the grand truth of the gospel. In the 3rd chapter, he summed up some of the grand realities. First is, God is holy. One God in 3 persons is holy. He is blameless. We saw that in verse 4. That is what he demands from his chosen one. So that means God is already holy and blameless. If you want, you can read. He chose us before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless. So God is not choosing someone to be holy and blameless when he himself is not. So God is already holy and blameless and has always been. And God is also triune. There is a perfect love between the persons of the Trinity. And all the attributes of God is expressed analogically in all the lives of man in the creation. And secondly, Paul is conveying that man is a vile sinner. We go back to Ephesians 2, when we were studying Ephesians 2, especially in verse 1 to 3. We saw some shocking things if you have been having very great opinion about you. He says, and you were dead in your trespasses and sins. Meaning you were just knocked off. You are not the person whom you probably think so great about. In the time past, you walked according to the course of this world. This world is full of sin. The world is full of evil. And your lifestyle is that. If you ever think that you are good, I'm actually a good person who has some bad stuff going on. I actually have a lot of good things in me. If there is any problem in the world, it is not me, it is the people who are around me. Now, Paul completely destroys that background, destroys that assumption, saying that it is you who walk in the course of the world which is evil. And he describes further, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now worketh in the children of disobedience. So you're naturally a wild, disobedient person to God. And then further he explains the character that it is the lust of the flesh. They always live for the fulfillment of the desires of the flesh and of the mind. So they do not have nothing, they do not have anything that is praiseworthy, honorable, something that any man can take glory in. But all they will ever do is abominable in the sight of God as disobedient beings. Such is the character of man. But what did God do? Paul has said, He chose us before the foundation of the world to be holy and blameless. And He predestined us to be conformed in the image of the Son and adopted us His sons and daughters. Verse 5. And verse 7 to 11, He said, He redeemed us by the blood of the Son. So it also means man is not able to come out of his hopeless ethical and moral behaviors. If there is anything ethical, it is unethical. If anything that can be related to moral, it is immoral. That is what man is all about. And he is not able to come out of that. So God graciously chose him, predestined him as sons and daughters, and sent His very own Son. He shed His blood on the cross. He lived the life of suffering so that He may be purchased brought back into the home. And that is what Paul has completely just made a full summary of it until the chapter 3. And verse chapter 12 at 2, he also talked about as Jews and Gentiles all have similar problems. Now because all have same solution, you are all brought home. So there is no difference even in this world there is no difference as Jew and Gentile. So you are a new community in Jesus Christ because of the power of the gospel that has transformed your minds and hearts, which has been by the gift changed by the gift of faith, according to Paul in verse 8 of chapter 2. You have been created for good works. You are God's masterpiece. You are made anew. You have been changed in position, and God does not look at you as worthless, wild, disobedient sinners, but rather God sees you as saints, sons and daughters. Therefore, Paul says, I urge you. Now what is Paul's reason here? Paul's reason is not that you are good enough to do something. Paul's reason is not, I know you Ephesians, you have a great potential to be somebody. No. Oh dear Ephesians, oh lowly ones among the people of the world who are oppressing you with their ungodliness. Oh people of Ephesians, who face all the difficulties and trials and sufferings in the world, I know that you are weak. I know that you are not capable to do things that God will ever be able to demand. And you know what is the hope? In the gospel. Because of Jesus Christ, through the Spirit, your mind has been enabled to do things which God wants you to do. You have a hope to please God, not because you yourself have manufactured such ability, but God has given you. He has made you new. You became a new person altogether. So as a new community, therefore I urge you. Paul's point is, your affections has been changed. Your focus of delight has been shifted from here to there, elsewhere. And the seed of God has been already impregnated or planted in you as a person. And that is why I urge you, dear Ephesians. That is Paul's point. So that must be seen throughout our reading of the rest of the portion of the book of Ephesians, from chapter 3 to chapter 4 to chapter 6. The obedience that comes out of us, do not ever push God to give us anything. But rather, we have received everything from the righteous hand of God without ever deserving anything. With a gratitude, with a grateful heart, we are called to obey. Our ethical and moral transformation do not make God obligated to give us anything, because we are naturally wild. But rather, as wild as we were, as unholy, abominable, detestable we were, God has changed us as something to be praiseworthy, honorable, lovely, holy, blameless. Your status has been changed, dear Ephesians. So you live in that status. That is Paul's point. Now I ask you today, dear church in KFF, what are you? Are you loathing yourself that I can't be doing this? Are you saying to yourself, living in a self-pity, oh man, I am like this. The whole world is oppressing me. Not only me, it's not, I know that I have a problem, but the whole world is feeding on that. Everybody hates me. Everybody puts me down. I don't have a hope that I can ever live a life pleasing to God. Are you saying that? You know what? You are ignorant of God's power. That's what Paul would say. Now Paul is calling you that those who are struggling and suffering and bleeding in the fight and who are ready to give up, that God, no longer I can fight this battle anymore. No, I don't want it. And Paul is calling you to look at a grand reality of gospel accomplishment that is in Jesus Christ, which you and I can take taken. You know why he says this? He's not merely saying something theoretical. If you have read Philippians 3, he enumerates, if there is someone who could be saved by obedience to the law, it should have been me. Born of a Pharisee, born in the clan of Benjamites. As to the zealous to the law, just like nobody else probably had shown the same zeal as I had. And he says, I lived, yet I consider all as a loss for surpassing greatness of knowing Jesus Christ as my Lord, because I know that these things would not have saved me at any point of time. These things would not have brought no virtues for me. The world would have lauded me for me being so and so. That is Paul's experience, and he knows this. Are you taking so much comfort in who you are by what people are saying? Don't live in fool's world. You are not that. All you need is comfort and hope of Jesus Christ, who offers the gospel hope. All you need is God's comfort. If you don't take that in, you are just building your whole beautiful house on false foundation. The Paul's point here is this: if you have been struggling with lust, if you have been struggling with anger, if you have been struggling with selfishness, if you have been struggling with just any of the character that world is condemning you with. Your hope is not in self-help, some sort of pragmatic truth. By just living in a monastic life, you can change everything. But Paul's point: welcome to the world of gospel hope. People, would you be taking your hope rather than trying hard going outside of Jesus Christ? Would you be taking comfort in the finished work of Jesus Christ? When you sin, you truly be sorrowful and repent and go back to Christ rather than trying anything nonsensical by fixing anything which is outside of Jesus Christ? Are you losing your hope, guys? This morning, Paul gives you a great hope that you don't have to fight vainly, because Jesus has done, because the Spirit enables you in the newness of life. Welcome to live in the reality. Therefore, I urge, it has such an important, serious connotation. And secondly, Paul conveys a change in the ethical and moral character is God's purpose of conforming us like His Son. If you were asked, what is the whole point of living like good man or good woman? What have I received anyway by living so good? Let me just ditch all things so I go live as the way I want. If you have been so exasperated by the rules and regulations, do's and don'ts of your family life, if you have been hating just living in a place where there is so much of people who are commanders, they always demand you to do something, and you are so depressed by it, Paul calls us that in the realm of God, in the gospel, what God demands is not mere do's and don'ts. It is not a joyless obedience to God, where God is a sadist who expects you to suffer when you do certain things as He demands. But Paul's point of pointing to the Ephesians believers to be transformed in the ethical and moral virtues is something really glorious. He says, let me pull that verse for you. In chapter 2, we come back to verse chapter 4. I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. You look at the construction of the words, are so powerful. I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. So Paul's point, let's go to the big deeper. So Paul's point is that you are called to be changed man in your ethical and moral behaviors in accordance with the gospel, not because the world will now laud you as someone who has achieved something grand, and not world will treat you as a man of great success. Such were the pharaohs of early 2000 years, and they were forgotten. And such were the successes of many people who hated God, and they were just safely buried under the pit. Now Paul's point today is, you're called to obey God called to do all things that God demands in the gospel, it's not because God wants to destroy you, but rather God wants to build you like His very own Son. And that is the phrase that keeps repeating. Paul just states it in Colossians 1:10. Paul says exactly same thing. Walk according to the word of God. Walk according to the word of the gospel. Walk according to the word of Lord Jesus Christ. In 1 Thessalonians 2:12, in all these places, Paul keeps on bringing the same word with great emphasis to make them understand that God's demand of obedience is not like a master to a slave, but rather a father to a son and daughter. And what is this glorious aim as we read? Why don't we pick up Romans 8:29 and just read that glorious passage. And one can pick up Ephesians 1:4. Ephesians 1:4.
Even as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that He should be holy and blameless before Him.
Yes. The purpose of God's election or choosing is to make us to be holy and blameless in His sight. And Romans 8:29 goes one more layer higher. What does he say?
For those whom He foreknew, He also took this time to be conformed to the image of His Son, in order that He might be the firstborn among many brothers.
Right, so those whom He foreknew, He predestined for what? To be conformed in the image of His Son. And Paul doesn't stop there. He goes on to say that He will be the firstborn among brethren. That means we are all participating as brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. So when God calls us to be changed in the ethical and moral behaviors, according to Paul, he tells to the Ephesians, that God is not calling you merely to change behavior, that you would live as heroes of Christian faith in the church, that you would be somebody who would be lauded. Oh, this Anna, the way he mentors people, the way he guides people, the way his understanding, oh, mind-blowing. And that is not the purpose that God has ever called anyone to be. The knowledge, the gifts, which we will discuss from next verse onwards next week in Ephesians 4:2 to 4:17. All situations, people, all have been given for one singular purpose, that you will be transformed like His glorious Son. And you will be useful in transforming fellow brothers like His glorious Son. So we often think of our Christian life, our obedience, our holiness is only merely individual and personal. No, let's not do that mistake ever. Our obedience is corporate. Our obedience affects our community. Our holiness affects and either it builds or destroys the people whom we work with. And Paul tells that, dear people, the calling is to be conformed like our elder brother. Unlike the elder brother whom we see in the passage of Luke 15, the prodigal son, story of what is so-called prodigal son. The elder brother who felt bad for the younger brother when he came back, our elder brother had come seeking for us. And the same Father who rejoiced in the younger brother who completely lost his life, it is not only the elder brother who rejoices in the younger brother who had come back home, it is also the father and the elder brother together are rejoicing in the younger brothers. And they want these disobedient, lowly and lustful, lost everything, just hopeless younger brother to be transformed like this glorious older brother whom we all cherish. So dear brothers and sisters, Paul's point is this, that gospel demands you not to be a joyless life. Your pain and your suffering in the path of Christian obedience is not something God is not aware of. It is something God wants you to endure, because God wants you to be like His Son Jesus. And it's just like the story goes, when a stone without any shape, without any beauty, without anything that we can admire, it is like a master chiseler who chisels everything, who just makes it as a beautiful stone, beautiful statue. God is building us by chiseling all that unwanted things in our lives. Because He wants us exactly to be like His Son. When we see Him, we will be like Him. But till the day He will continue to chisel. When He chisels, it is not easy. When He confronts you with your besetting sins, when God tells you that, man, you think you are so good at it, but you are absolutely weak. When God just brings people into our lives, and when they tell us that we are somebody, it is not so easy, it is painful. But it is God's means of making us to be transformed in our ethical and moral behavior, that He may conform us like His Son Jesus. Dear church, be reminded that our change in ethical and moral character displays God's grand purpose of we being transformed in the likeness of His Son Jesus. So, rest of the Ephesians must be read in that light. All of God's commandments ought to be read in that light. And thirdly, Paul is also talking about how should this changed character in ethics and moral aspects, moral virtues. Paul's point here is this: our aim must be to live with conviction of changed ethical and moral character in Jesus Christ. So, what is Paul trying to say here? Paul's usage of the word walk, the original language word, sheds some light about what Paul is trying to convey and what Paul is expecting. The word here tells us that walk is not merely as something that happens only one day. Nobody talks about standing like this as a walk. There is a specific movement, there is a pace, and there is a purpose, there is a destiny, and there is involvement of the mind and heart of the whole person, and physical activity of the whole person. So the idea is that Paul is conveying that the change in ethical and moral behavior out of the gospel is not happen one single day. It is built over a period of time. So do not be losing your heart when you are not able to conform to the standard of God, but rather look up to Jesus Christ whenever you are found to be short of it. But take heart in Jesus. And it is also, don't just stop because you are walking well. It is not about only one day. You are called to walk, you are called to live until the walk gets completed. And that is completed either when we go to the ground, or when Jesus comes back in His glory. The first one is very, very likely, because of my eschatological views, coming of Jesus is definitely not going to happen in our time. The gospel must be proclaimed. The transformation must be brought into all creatures, all life. When He comes, then He will make us all perfect. But till then, we are called to walk in obedience. You know, it takes whole life to live a whole Christian life. It's not happens one day. It does not happen in one day. So Paul's point here is, as believers of Jesus Christ, those who have been given new ability, new mind, new heart, in the new nature, live your life with this grand conviction of being transformed in the ethical and moral behaviors, moral virtues every day. Aim to live that way. Aim to please God. Aim to live in obedience to the Savior who saved you, who rescued you, who changed you, who has called you, who has made you His sons and daughters. I'm reminded of Saint Augustine, a man who started his life in the wild pursuits of life, both intellectually and physically. He was a Manichaean, a sect which had a Gnostic tendency, meaning ungodly in its philosophy. And this man himself was a man who sought physical pursuits and pleasure in the realm of sexuality. Until one day his heart was made warm, heart had changed, that let us not live in drunkenness, let us not live in this way. And when he heard the words of God, his life was profoundly changed and affected. Then at the end of the life, when he gave his life, completely lived for the Christian truth, and he was called as Saint Augustine. A great sinner has become a great saint. And Paul is calling us all to be that way. Guys, I ask you this one last question this morning. When 20 years down the line, 40 years down the line, when people remember your name, when your next generation, when your children, grandchildren, or when all your great grandchildren, whenever they even think of you, what will they say about you? Would they be saying, as my father and my mother is so and so, who lived with all his and her weaknesses for the sake of the gospel, for the comfort of Jesus Christ? Or would they be saying, that man tried so hard but failed so miserably? I want you all to remember that this obedience that we are called to is not is not something that we need to bring, or the weight of the whole obedience, so that we may please God outside of Jesus Christ. We will be crushed under the expectation or the demands of the law of God. Rather, God gives glorious beings of Jesus Christ. The Spirit has continued to change our hearts and continue to convict our dark areas of our life. My request, my plea to you would be, Would you be willing to listen to the Spirit's call? Would you be willing to heed when people point out your mistake and humbly learn? And such, we always go into defensive mode. I've been there multiple times. We do not like when people tell us that we are wrong. We do not like when our fellow Christians tell us something. We often, question their motives. Do they even ask such questions with great motives? We don't know about their motives, which we will never be sure about. But one thing we can be sure about, nothing happens, no words are uttered outside the sovereign and providence plan of God. So when people do bring such complaints against us, let us look ourselves in the gospel mirror and see if we are truly like His Son Jesus. Because it is a command, it is the whole summary of our Christian life. The marrow of Christian life is this: we live our Christian life in union with Jesus Christ, which enables us to obey. The marrow of Christian life is this: we live our Christian life in union with Jesus Christ, which enables us to obey to all the demands of God and enables us to please God. May you as Christians, when you walk out of the church, may be reminded of this grand reality that you are called to obey, not by your own efforts, but in Jesus Christ. You are already considered as sons and daughters. That may God give you the gospel assurance that your life is safe and secure, and outside of that, fullness of that, your actions and your words and your character, conduct, virtue will flow. May you be mindful. May you be profoundly be affected by this truth. May gospel of God break you and build you. May the person of Jesus Christ be the greatest delight in the world than anything or anybody could ever be. May God give you grace to understand these things. As Paul says, I urge you, brothers, walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. Let's pray. Gracious God, we want to thank you for this morning. We all are in different phases of our sanctification. Some are far ahead of us, some are far behind us, some are with us. Yet God, our battle is not with our brethren who have gone ahead of us. Our happiness is not, there are so many people who are far behind us. But God, our pursuit is your Son whom you have set us before. Enable us to understand the purpose of that calling, that we may be able to completely be persuaded by all that He has done on behalf of us in His life and death, that we may walk in the newness of life. Our ethical and moral virtues may be profoundly be affected to live as people of God. That when you see us, that you may, Lord, take joy and call us that good and faithful servant. That is our longing, and that is our desire. Thank you, God, for this day. We give you all the glory and honor to you. In Jesus' most precious name we pray.